All right, welcome to another bragging rights. It's been a long time since I've done one of these. I've done a ton of painting and hobbying at the new house, but I just haven't had the time to put together a video. I'll try to do a little more of that during the holiday season this year, and here's the first one. I recently embarked on a project to use a lot of classic Citadel Nurgle models that I've had and regular Chaos models that I've had for a very long time. I wanted to really just paint up things I already owned. So these are for Trench Crusade and also for Mordheim. So this first model is actually not for Trench Crusade. Technically, it's not a Nurgle model. We have here a Herald and Nurgle seated on top of a classic Citadel Plague cart. So I'm using this as the classic Citadel corpse cart. I'm using this as a plague cart for the Carnival of Chaos for Mordheim. The guy on top was pretty fun to paint. Overall, this whole project, the style is meant to be very putrid and gross, obviously. With the basing, I achieved that with a lot of rust, moss, bile, a lot of sort of blood technical effects paints, as well as using Vallejo thick mud and some still water. So also with this project, I intended on varying my painting style quite a bit. So let me talk about that with some of these. So here we have some classic Citadel zombies. Little minor conversions here. I have some Tomb King skeleton bowman arms on a couple of these because in Mordheim, when I field them as Carnival of Chaos, the Brethren, I believe, can take bows, so I wanted to make sure that I had a couple of models modeled up that way. For Trench Crusade, these are my Grail thralls. You know, just think of them as zombie hordes. Now, what did I do that was different from usual with this? Well, with the skins, I wanted to let's see if we can get them to focus. Wanted to experiment a bit with the skin. So this skin is achieved with a mix of dark oath flesh, medium mixer. I don't know if I can get him to focus, as well as plague bearer flesh. And then on top of that, I went with a wash made out of, I believe it's Magos purple, the very light contrast purple. I put that over the skin to kind of give it a little bit of a stain almost. And then kind of regular-ish contrasts with some highlighter, dry brushing over the other dirty bits of cloth that they have on them. For the basing, I went with some cork here and there, a lot of skulls, and then of course those effects paints that I spoke about before on top of Vallejo mud. All of the basing in here uses that basic recipe, so I won't go through it again. So those are the zombie models from the Citadel plastic kit, which I still have a handful of those that I will use for all sorts of random purposes. So next, this is the model that kind of got me started on this project in an odd way, even though it's not fantasy. This is I think it's a 1988 Rogue Trader Chaos or Renegade Dreadnought. So this model is classically ugly but has some charm. I thought it was appropriate for Nurgle, and I've had them sitting in a box waiting for some paint for so long. A few of these models came from the same eBay auction that was just this grainy photo that said classic lead models, and I spotted the outlines of a few classic Citadel models, and I went ahead and bought the auction. This is back when you could actually find deals on eBay. So this guy is painted with a recipe of plague bearer flesh for the green parts, with a yellow wash, a glaze a glaze over them. It's 2 thin coats yellow glaze. I think I thinned it down just a tiny bit. And then for the black sections, it's I believe it's the contrast kind of blackish brown. It's rattling grime. I put together, just because there was a lot of room on the base, I put together some mud puddles for him to be stepping in, and having corrosion all over there, and then also just with some bamboo coffee stirrers, made a little wall, put a little Nurgling in the front too. Just another classic Nurgle model that I had sitting around. I thought, why not use them as some decoration? A couple more models that came from that same auction, and I love these models so much. These are the girls. Oh, sorry, that Dreadnought I play not in Mordheim, but in the Trench Crusade. I use that as an amalgam. These two I use in Trench Crusade as Heralds of Beelzebub. So these are the classic Chaos Harpies, one of my favorite Citadel models actually. I have a few of them kicking around in different armies. I want to paint perhaps a couple more for this group. Unfortunately, I don't have a use for them for Mordheim, but they will be useful if I ever expand this army out to also be used for things like Turnip, where, you know, vaguely Nurgle models can be used for a lot of different skirmish games. For these ones, I used a recipe that I've used on my Tyranids before and I got from Mediocre Hobbies, although I definitely adjusted it. The recipe is something like a regular flesh of something like a Acadian with a little bit of Kislev over it. And then on top of that, we use the, I believe it's called the Carroburg Crimson Wash. And you see that the wings still have that wash. And then came right back over it with Kislev and I should have my paints in front of me. The Witch Elf, or Flayed One Flesh. I'm sorry about that, Flayed One Flesh. And I built up the bases on these two because they're flying, and I thought having higher bases would help sell that a little better. A couple more models. One of these may have came from that auction. The other one came from a massive Chaos army I bought many years ago, and I've just very slowly painted away at it. We have the old Scylla model. It's this guy. Boy, he has changed over the years. And then just one of the Chaos Hounds. And this one I particularly like the sculpt. I had used some of my other Chaos Hounds from this same range as mounts for goblins in my Chaos Dwarf army. If I ever show that off, you'll see. Those ones had the back area on the wolf was more appropriate to have something riding it. These ones were not, with the placement of the spikes in the legs, so these ones become just plain Chaos Hounds. So for Mordheim, they become a hound type model, and for Trench Crusade, these are I believe they're called Plague Hounds, if I'm not mistaken. All right. And this is the first one, I think, where I put in some stakes that I drilled right through and put in the barbed water on that. A couple of tokens. In the game of Trench Crusade, there's a condition called Tough that's tracked with tokens, and I figured these would be good tokens for that. And in Mordheim, they can be just spell markers for anything. They can be treasure markers, whatever. It's always good to have a couple of random things like that done up. Speaking of random things, how about some Nurglings? So we'll start with, these are my plague flies. These guys do have wings. You'll see as they go around. These are the zombies, essentially, with wings that the Order of the Black Grail gets to take. And then in the Mordheim Carnival of Chaos, they're just plain Nurglings. And one of the things that I did with this whole army that I mentioned before that I pretty much never do is I put a satin varnish on it. And the satin varnish is meant to show that they're like kind of wet and slimy. They're in this rainy, trenchy, war-torn area of no man's land. All right, so with these Nurglings, I actually went with two different styles. One of them, I used that green recipe I spoke about before of Plague Bearer Flesh with that yellow glaze over it, and then some highlights in various lighter greens, think like scorpion green type of recipe mixed with a tiny bit of yellow or skeleton bone to drab it a little bit. Next up, we have a model I didn't paint, so I just want to get him out of the way. This guy was just kind of perfect as I found him on eBay. I was looking for one of there's like 3 classic Chaos champions to have long rifles, and I needed a guy with some sort of rifle or machine gun for Trench Crusade, and this guy was painted in a way that blends in with everything I have while still looking a little bit unique, and I just popped them onto a base I created. I gave him a couple of Grail devotees, which are essentially Nurglings that give you bonuses to injure in Trench Crusade. I could use him as well for Mordheim Carnival of Chaos, but he's a little less appropriate there. And he has some nice corrosion, like verdigris on the armor. Not exactly the way I do it, but I think it fits in really nicely. And the purple just happens to work really well too. Next, we got the big boy, Epidemius, Tallyman and Nurgle. So this is the Lord of Tumors in Trench Crusade, and right now he doesn't have a use for Carnival of Chaos. But if I'm ever playing things like the old Chaos Warrior skirmish game, which I do have, and I've got some friends who might want to play that, he can be used for something, you know. And most of these smaller scale indie skirmish games have like a monster hero type, so I'll find a use for him. This guy, the most of him was what I had already spoken about for kind of Nurgle techniques, and let's see if we can get him to focus. It's pretty good. Corrosion, slime, and this green is the green I've already spoken about. I did paint let's see if we can get it on here. Yeah, I did paint a Grail on there, and then some Nurgle over here. Over here on the red banner, I used Gal Vorback. Well, you take a look at it. Gal Vorback Red. It's newer than my knowledge of the lore, so I couldn't tell you what that's named for. I tried a few. Geez, wow, camera switching. Tried a few new things with this guy. His skin is, let's see, it's a couple of layers of traditional flesh built up to the flayed one, and then I came in with a lot of very light glazes, mostly glazes that were based on that Magos purple and or Carroburg crimson, as well as I brought in the I'll grab it because I'm actually forgetting the name. Volupus Pink. I brought in some of this as well, like ultra thin down, and put it over the sort of sores on his belly. They look kind of like scarring tissue or maybe maggots, who knows. And then came in with a lighter pink, I think something like pink horror pink, something like that, to do the highlights from there. A few more models. So these two guys for Carnival of Chaos and for a lot of things I played would just be Plague Bearers. They have black shields. This one's one of the Kev Adams special shields. The other one's from an Undead kit. These guys came in that auction I talked about forever ago. I've got a handful more of them that I want to do up. They are Corpse Guard in Trench Crusade, and Corpse Guard had this amazing set of rules for specifically when they're armed with black shields. You get to essentially heavily punish enemy shooting against them, and they get to redirect hits. They're pretty nice. Definitely, if you're taking Black Grail, definitely don't sleep on the black shields. Okay, what else do we have? We got a couple more guys. This is one of the Champions of Chaos. And I always kind of think of him as Nurgle bound. I think he might be officially Nurgle, but he might be undivided. Now that I look at him, I don't see any symbols jumping out at me. But I'm using him as my Carnival Master for Carnival of Chaos, and he actually doesn't really have a strong place to be used in the Trench Crusade Black Grail. However, in the future, maybe they'll have a hired gun, whatever the mercenaries are called, or something like that I can field him as. He was pretty basic. In this case, I brought in some purple from the extended triads that Fanatic Army Painter has. A lot of washes went over him too. I think I gave him a Duncan sepia wash, and gave him a gem on top. It's kind of a gem eyeball. All right, one more miniature for this project. We have Just a really traditional Nurgle knight. He's a Chaos champion from many years ago, and then I gave him a modern Nurgle shield just because I thought it looked good with the model and kind of sold the Nurgle theme. He's got something that could be used as a plague blade or could be just a regular greatsword. He's got some swords and things like that showing through his armor as well. His armor uses that same recipe that I mentioned a couple times before, plague bearer flesh with some yellow glaze over it. I also made with 3D printing with the Byzantine Trenches set that I bought on Kickstarter a long time ago. I digitally digitally converted it to be used as a display board. I cut in all of the holes to kind of fit these guys perfectly and magnetized it. And yeah, that's my display board for these guys. I have one for Mordheim as well for a different warband that I can show off in the future. The last thing I did for this was I printed out some Grail coins that I found on my mini factory, and each of them on the front, and I used Dirty Down's verdigris effect on these. Each of them on the front does have a Roman numeral right here that shows the number. A little hard to read. I think that one's a 1. Let's test it. Yep, it's a 1. So there's a few scenarios in Trench Crusade in the main rulebook set where you have tokens that you either need to control as objectives or you need to flip, and these being flippable perfectly fit the bill. There's kind of weird rules on the spacing of objectives. I tend to like the types of objectives that are a kind of a large neoprene thing. So instead of measuring distance from a point, you just know if you're standing on the neoprene, then you're on the objective. I might print some of those out for, or cut some of those out for Trench Crusade, but I just haven't gotten around to it. All right, well, I'm rambling on. This was a long one. And in the future, I'm hoping to cover the great American War of Independence stuff that I've done. I've done a ton of it, a little bit of French and Indian War. I've painted a absolute ton of 40K and Necromunda, and a warband for Mordheim that I'm really proud of. So hopefully we'll be back soon with more. All right, thanks.